The woman who disappeared into the water. The night air is warm on Chappaquiddick Island, carrying with it the salt smell of the ocean and the gentle rustling of beach grass in the breeze. It is July 18th, 1969, and the hour is approaching midnight. The moon hangs low over Chappaquiddick, its light scattered across the water's surface in 1,000 silver fragments that shift and dance with the current. Mary Jo Kopechne stands outside a small cottage, saying goodbye to friends. She is 28 years old, wearing a light blue sleeveless blouse and white slacks, summer evening clothes chosen for comfort rather than formality. Her dark hair is styled neatly, though a few strands have come loose during the evening. She is smiling, but there is something tired in her expression, something that suggests this entire reunion has been both healing and exhausting in equal measure. She has spent the evening reconnecting with the other boiler room girls, the women who worked alongside her during Robert Kennedy's presidential campaign. They have shared memories, laughter, tears. They have remembered Bobby together, have honored him through their shared grief, have tried to find meaning in the senseless tragedy that took him from them 14 months ago. Now it is late, and Mary Jo wants to return to her hotel room in Edgartown. She is tired. The evening has been emotionally draining. She is ready for this day to end, ready to sleep, ready to wake tomorrow and continue the slow process of rebuilding a life that lost its central purpose when Bobby died. Senator Ted Kennedy has offered her a ride to the ferry landing. It is a simple, practical arrangement. He is returning to his hotel as well, and it makes sense for them to share the short drive. Mary Jo accepts gratefully. She says her final goodbyes to the other women. She picks up her small purse. She walks with Ted Kennedy toward his car, a black Oldsmobile Delmont 88 parked in the shadows near the cottage. She does not know, how could she know, that she will never reach the ferry. She does not know that in approximately 15 minutes, she will be underwater, trapped in darkness, fighting for air that is running out moment by moment. She does not know that she has less than 2 hours left to live, that this ordinary summer evening will be the last evening she ever experiences. She opens the car door. She gets in. The door closes with a solid thunk. The engine starts. The headlights come on, cutting through the darkness of the island night. This is the last moment when Mary Jo Kopechne's life is still her own, when her future still stretches ahead of her, full of possibility, when she is still simply a young woman heading home after a party. In a few minutes, she will become something else. A victim, a scandal, a name forever linked to tragedy and unanswered questions. A life reduced to political footnote rather than remembered for itself. The car begins to move down the dark road. Mary Jo looks out the window at the passing trees, the glimpses of water through the vegetation, the beautiful desolation of the island at night. She does not know that these are the last sights she will ever see as a free person, that soon the only thing she will see is black water and the metal interior of a car that has become her tomb. The night is warm. The moon is bright. The ocean whispers against the shore. And Mary Jo Kopechne, who has already survived so much grief, who has already endured the loss of a man she admired and believed in, drives toward a death she cannot anticipate and did nothing to deserve. To understand who Mary Jo Kopechne was, you must first understand where she came from and what shaped her. She was born on July 26, 1940, in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, into a working-class Catholic family that valued faith, education, and service above all else. Her parents, Joseph and Gwen Kopechne, were insurance agents who had worked hard to build a modest middle-class life for their only child. Mary Jo was their miracle, their joy, the center of their world. They raised her with deep Catholic faith. Sunday Mass was not optional, prayers before meals were standard, and the values of the church permeated every aspect of their home. But they also encouraged her intellectually, pushed her to excel academically, taught her that a woman could be both devout and ambitious, both faithful and independent. She attended Catholic schools where she was known as a serious student, deeply engaged with her studies, particularly drawn to business and administration. She was not the most outgoing girl in her class, but she was respected. People recognized her intelligence, her integrity, her quiet determination to make something meaningful of her life. After graduating from Caldwell College for Women in New Jersey with a degree in business administration, Mary Jo made a decision that would define the trajectory of her adult life. She moved to Washington, D.C. It was 1962, and the nation's capital was humming with the energy of the Kennedy administration. For young, idealistic, educated people who believed that government could be a force for good, Washington was the place to be. Mary Jo took a job as a secretary for Senator George Smathers of Florida. It was entry-level work, but she approached it with the same seriousness she had brought to everything in her life. She was efficient, reliable, discreet, qualities that made her valuable in the often chaotic world of congressional offices. But more than that, she was genuinely interested in the substance of political work, in policy and legislation, and the mechanics of how laws were made. When she had the opportunity to join Robert Kennedy's Senate staff, she took it immediately. Bobby Kennedy represented something that resonated deeply with Mary Jo's sense of purpose. He spoke about poverty and injustice in ways that felt morally urgent rather than politically calculated. He seemed to genuinely care about people who had been left behind by American prosperity. He embodied a kind of politics that Mary Jo could believe in without cynicism. By 1968, when Bobby decided to run for president, Mary Jo had become one of his most trusted staffers. She was selected to work in the boiler room, the campaign's data operation, where 6 young women tracked delegates, analyzed voting patterns, compiled the information that would guide strategic decisions. It was intense, high-pressure work, often lasting late into the night, but Mary Jo thrived in it. She had found her purpose. She was part of something larger than herself, part of a campaign that might actually change America. The Boiler Room Girls, Mary Jo, Rosemary Keogh, Esther Newberg, Nance Lyons, Mary Ellen Lyons, and Susan Tannenbaum, became a tight-knit group, bonded by their shared commitment and the intensity of campaign life. They were smart, dedicated, deeply invested in Bobby's vision of America. They believed that he could heal the divisions tearing the country apart, that he could end the war in Vietnam, that he could address racial injustice and poverty in meaningful ways. Mary Jo was in the Ambassador Hotel ballroom on the night of June 5, 1968. She witnessed Bobby's victory in the California primary. She heard his speech about moving forward together, about the possibility of hope even in dark times. And she was somewhere in that crowd when the shots rang out, when Bobby fell, when the dream of 1968 died on a kitchen floor. The trauma of that night never fully left her. How could it? She had devoted herself completely to a cause, to a leader, to a vision of what America could become. And in a single moment of violence, it was all destroyed. Bobby was gone. The campaign was over. The future that had seemed so bright was foreclosed. In the months that followed, Mary Jo struggled to find her footing. She took a job with a consulting firm in Washington, but the work felt hollow compared to what she had been doing. The sense of purpose that had animated her life was gone. She went through the motions, showed up at the office, completed her assignments, maintained her friendships. But something essential had been extinguished. Friends from the campaign stayed in touch, supporting each other through their shared grief. When Ted Kennedy organized a reunion of the Boiler Room Girls for July 1969, Mary Jo accepted the invitation. It would be a chance to reconnect, to remember Bobby together, to perhaps find some closure to the most intense and painful period of her life. She traveled to Chappaquiddick Island with hope, not for anything dramatic, but for the simple human comfort of being with people who understood what she had lost, who shared her grief, who could help her begin to imagine a future beyond the campaign that had defined her. She had no way of knowing that this reunion would be the last gathering she would ever attend, that her attempt to find closure would instead lead to a different kind of ending entirely. To understand what brought Ted Kennedy to Chappaquiddick Island that July night, you must understand the weight he carried, the impossible position he occupied in the summer of 1969. He was 37 years old and the last surviving Kennedy brother. Joe Jr. had died in World War II. Jack had been assassinated in Dallas. Bobby had been assassinated in Los Angeles just 13 months before this night. The entire machinery of Kennedy ambition, 3 generations of careful construction, of strategic positioning, of relentless pursuit of power, now rested solely on Ted's shoulders. He had never been meant to carry this burden alone. He was the youngest, the one who was supposed to support his brothers, not replace them. But history had eliminated his brothers, and now the family, the party, the nation looked to him as the keeper of the Kennedy legacy. The pressure was suffocating. He was not Jack with his intellectual brilliance and natural charisma. He was not Bobby with his moral intensity and capacity for transformation. He was Ted, competent, hardworking, but always somehow less than his brothers, always in their shadow, even now that they were dead, especially now that they were dead, because the dead become mythologized in ways the living cannot match. By 1969, political analysts were already positioning him as the inevitable Democratic nominee for 1972. The Kennedy name still carried enormous power. The memory of Camelot, however illusory it had been, still resonated with millions of Americans. Ted Kennedy seemed like the natural heir to his brother's legacy, the one who would complete what they had started. But Ted himself was deeply ambivalent. He had seen what happened to his brothers. He had buried them. He carried survivor's guilt that gnawed at him constantly. Why had he lived when they had died? What made him worthy of surviving when they, who had been so much more than he was, had been taken? The pattern of Kennedy tragedy haunted him. He feared that seeking the presidency would simply mark him as the next target, that the curse, if such a thing existed, would claim him as it had claimed his brothers. And yet he could not simply refuse. The family expected him to run. The party needed him to run. His entire life had been preparation for this moment, even though it was a moment he had never wanted and was not sure he could handle. In July 1969, Ted Kennedy was a man caught between duty and fear, between what everyone expected of him and what he himself wanted, which was perhaps simply to survive, to live a full life, to not become the next Kennedy martyr. He was drinking more than he should, using alcohol to numb the anxiety and grief and pressure. He was making decisions that were not always well considered, taking risks that suggested a man not fully in control of his own life. He organized the reunion for the Boiler Room Girls partly out of genuine gratitude for their service to Bobby's campaign, partly out of a desire to maintain connections to his brother's world, and partly, though perhaps he did not consciously acknowledge this, out of a need for connection with people who shared his grief, who understood what it meant to have invested everything in Bobby and then to have lost him. Ted Kennedy on the night of July 18, 1969, was not a villain in some simple melodrama. He was a complicated, wounded man struggling under impossible pressure, making choices, some good, some catastrophically bad, while trying to navigate a life that had become almost unbearable. This does not excuse what happened. It does not diminish his responsibility, but it does make him human rather than monstrous, which is somehow more troubling because it means that what happened on Chappaquiddick was not the result of evil, but of weakness, fear, and profoundly flawed judgment. Chappaquiddick Island in summer is peaceful, almost somnolent. The roads are quiet, the beaches are beautiful. The pace of life slows to match the rhythm of tides and sunsets. On the evening of July 18, 1969, the island was settling into its nightly stillness, the last light fading from the sky, the sounds of day giving way to the sounds of night. Crickets, the distant wash of waves, the whisper of wind through beach grass. At the cottage on Chappaquiddick Road, the reunion was winding down. The 6 Boiler Room Girls and 6 men associated with the Kennedy Circle had spent the evening eating, drinking, talking, remembering. The atmosphere had been bittersweet, joy at reconnecting mixed with the ever-present grief over Bobby's death, laughter interspersed with moments of reflective silence. Mary Jo had enjoyed the evening, but was ready for it to end. She was tired. The emotional weight of remembering Bobby, of being with people who had shared that intense campaign experience, had drained her. When Ted Kennedy mentioned that he was heading back to his hotel in Edgartown to catch the ferry, Mary Jo asked if she could get a ride. It was nearly 11:30 p.m. The last ferry ran at midnight. If she wanted to return to her hotel, she needed to leave soon. They walked to the car together. The other guests watched them go, some later reporting a vague unease they could not quite articulate, a sense that something was slightly off, though they could not say what. It was just two people leaving a party to catch a ferry. It should have been completely unremarkable. Mary Jo got into the passenger seat. Ted got behind the wheel. The car started. The headlights illuminated the road ahead. And they drove away from the cottage, away from witnesses, away from the place where Mary Jo's story was still her own to write. The road to the ferry was straightforward. Stay on Chappaquiddick Road until you reach the landing. But Ted did not stay on Chappaquiddick Road. At an intersection, he turned onto Dike Road, a narrow, unpaved path that led not toward the ferry, but toward Dike Bridge, a small wooden structure crossing Pucha Pond. Inside the car, what was said? What was thought? These questions have no definitive answers. Ted would later claim he made a wrong turn, became confused, did not realize his mistake until it was too late. But the turn was clearly marked. The road surface changed from pavement to rough dirt. The route led away from any logical destination. Did Mary Jo question the turn? Did she ask where they were going? Did she feel alarm as the car bounced over the rutted road, heading deeper into darkness? Or did she trust that Ted Kennedy knew where he was going? That as a senator, as a Kennedy, he was competent and reliable and would get her safely to the ferry? The headlights cut through the darkness. The car moved forward, and ahead, invisible in the night until the last moment, Dike Bridge appeared, narrow without guardrails, sitting at a slight angle that required a careful turn to navigate properly. The car was moving too fast. Whether Ted was distracted, whether he did not see the bridge until too late, whether his judgment was impaired by the alcohol he had consumed during the evening, whatever the reason, the car did not make the turn. It went off the right side of the bridge. For a brief moment, it was airborne, and then it hit the water with tremendous force, flipping as it crashed, landing upside down in Pucha Pond. The water was cold, not frozen, but cold enough to shock the body, to make every movement feel sluggish and difficult. The pond was 6 to 8 feet deep at this point, deep enough that the car settled with its roof on the muddy bottom and its wheels pointing toward the sky. Inside the vehicle, there was darkness and confusion and rising water. The windows were open or had shattered on impact. Water poured in with terrifying speed, filling the car, climbing higher moment by moment. Ted Kennedy would later testify that he escaped through a window, that he struggled against the current in his own disorientation, that he finally broke free and reached the surface and gasped air. Whether this account is accurate, whether he made multiple attempts to rescue Mary Jo as he claimed, whether he dove repeatedly trying to reach her, these are questions that can never be fully answered because the only living witness is Ted himself, and his testimony has been questioned from the beginning. What is known is that Ted Kennedy got out of the car and Mary Jo Kopechne did not. She remained inside as the vehicle settled, as the water continued to rise, as the air spaces shrank. In the darkness, in the cold, she fought to survive. She found a space in the back seat, near the footwell, where an air pocket had formed. She pushed her face into this space, tilting her head back, breathing the trapped air, and she waited. She waited for Ted Kennedy to bring help. She waited for rescue divers to arrive. She waited for someone to understand that she was alive, that time was critical, that she needed them now. The air pocket kept her alive for a time. Exactly how long we cannot know. But investigators would later estimate at least an hour, possibly 2 hours. Long enough that if help had been called immediately, if professional rescue divers had been dispatched the moment the accident occurred, she might have been saved. But help was not called. Hours passed. The air in the pocket slowly became toxic as she exhaled carbon dioxide and consumed the limited oxygen. The cold seeped into her body, slowing her metabolism, making thought difficult. The water continued to rise incrementally as the tide shifted and the car settled deeper into the mud. At some point, after how long we will never know, Mary Jo Kopechne stopped breathing. Whether she drowned when the air finally ran out, whether hypothermia claimed her first, whether she simply lost consciousness and slipped away, the exact mechanism of her death remains uncertain. What is certain is that she died alone, in darkness, in cold water, waiting for rescue that never came. She died because Ted Kennedy chose not to call for help immediately, chose instead to protect himself rather than risk the questions, that would come from reporting the accident right away. On the shore of Chappaquiddick, Ted Kennedy stood in wet clothes, breathing air that Mary Jo could not breathe. According to his later testimony, he was in shock, disoriented, confused about what to do. But he was also capable of walking approximately a mile and a half back to the cottage where the party had been held, which suggests a level of physical and mental coherence sufficient to make decisions. Along this walk, he passed at least 4 houses with lights on. At any of these houses, he could have knocked on the door, explained that there had been an accident, asked to use a phone to call police and rescue personnel. He did not stop at any of them. When he reached the cottage, he found his cousin Joe Gargan and friend Paul Markham. In a quiet conversation away from the other guests, he told them what had happened. The 3 men drove back to Dike Bridge. Gargan and Markham dove into the water, attempting to reach the submerged car, attempting to rescue Mary Jo. Like Ted, they failed. The current was strong, the visibility was zero, the car had settled in a position that made access extremely difficult. At this point, approximately midnight, roughly 45 minutes after the accident, 3 men knew that a woman was trapped underwater in a car. 3 men understood that professional rescue divers might be able to save her if they were called immediately. 3 men had the ability to pick up a phone and summon help. None of them did. Instead, according to Ted's testimony, Gargan and Markham drove him to the ferry landing. The ferry had stopped running for the night, but Ted, an experienced swimmer, dove into the channel and swam across to Edgartown. He returned to his hotel, was seen by the hotel owner at approximately 2:25 a.m., went to his room, took a bath, changed clothes, and went to bed, or at least lay down. The hours passed. The sun rose. Ted Kennedy had breakfast. He spoke with other hotel guests, made small talk, appeared relatively normal if somewhat distracted. He did not call the police. He did not report the accident. He allowed the morning to proceed as though nothing had happened. It was not until 9:45 a.m., more than 10 hours after the accident, that Ted Kennedy walked into the Edgartown police station and reported that his car had gone off Dike Bridge with Mary Jo Kopechne inside. By that time, Mary Jo had been dead for hours. By that time, 2 fishermen had already discovered the overturned car and reported it. By that time, a diver named John Farrar had already entered the water and found Mary Jo's body positioned in the back seat, her face pressed upward toward the air pocket, her hands positioned as though she had been trying to push herself higher, trying to stay alive just a little longer. Farrar would later testify that if rescue divers had been called immediately, Mary Jo Kopechne could have been saved. The air pocket had been sufficient to sustain her for a considerable time. Professional divers with proper equipment could have accessed the vehicle and extracted her within the critical window. She did not die because the accident was unsurvivable. She died because no one called for help. She died because Ted Kennedy made a series of choices, choosing not to stop at lit houses, choosing not to call police from the cottage, choosing to swim back to his hotel rather than report the accident, choosing to sleep rather than act, that prioritized his own interests over her life. When the 2 fishermen spotted the overturned car in Chappaquiddick early on the morning of July 19, they initially could not believe what they were seeing. A car, wheels up, partially submerged near Dike Bridge. They notified authorities immediately. Police arrived. John Farrar, the local fire chief and an experienced diver, was called to the scene. He entered the cold water, navigated the strong current, and approached the submerged vehicle. When he looked inside, he saw Mary Jo Kopechne's body in the back seat. The position of her body told a story that was almost unbearable to contemplate. She had not been killed instantly by the impact. She had survived the crash. She had found the air pocket. She had positioned herself to breathe for as long as possible. She had died slowly, over time, waiting. Farrar would later express his professional opinion that the air pocket could have sustained her for 1 to 2 hours, possibly longer depending on various factors. He was explicit in his assessment. If he had been called to the scene immediately, if the accident had been reported when it occurred, Mary Jo Kopechne would likely have survived. The rescue would have been difficult, but absolutely feasible. She did not die because rescue was impossible. She died because rescue was never attempted. When authorities identified the car as belonging to Ted Kennedy, the investigation immediately became complicated by politics, by power, by the machinery of the Kennedy family's influence. The questions that should have been asked with brutal directness: why did you wait 10 hours? Why didn't you call for help? Could she have been saved? Were asked more gently, more carefully, with an awareness that this was a Kennedy, that normal rules might not fully apply. Ted Kennedy's initial statements were vague, inconsistent. He claimed shock, confusion, impaired judgment. He claimed he had tried to rescue Mary Jo, had dove repeatedly, had done everything he could, but the timeline made no sense. The 10-hour delay could not be adequately explained. The decision to swim back to his hotel rather than call police from the cottage defied rational explanation. News of the accident spread rapidly. Within hours, it was a national story. Another Kennedy tragedy. But this time, the Kennedy was not the victim. This time, the Kennedy was the one whose decisions had led to someone else's death. This time, the questions were not about an external enemy, but about Kennedy himself. His judgment, his character, his willingness to sacrifice someone else to protect his own interests. The media descended on Martha's Vineyard and Chappaquiddick Island. Reporters tracked down everyone who had been at the party. The Boiler Room girls, who had come seeking closure and healing, found themselves trapped in a nightmare of scrutiny, their private grief over Bobby's death now compounded by this new tragedy. Their friend Mary Jo dead in circumstances that became more troubling the more details emerged. Ted Kennedy hired lawyers. The Kennedy family machinery activated, the same apparatus that had protected the family's image for decades, that knew how to manage crises, shape narratives, control information flow. But Chappaquiddick was different. The facts were stubborn. The timeline was damning. The questions would not go away. 1 week after the accident, Ted Kennedy appeared on national television wearing a neck brace, claiming to have suffered a concussion in the crash, though the severity and timing of this injury would be questioned. He delivered a carefully written statement expressing sorrow while avoiding clear admission of responsibility. He described the accident as tragic, his behavior afterward as the result of shock and confusion that impaired his judgment. He suggested there were aspects of the night he could not fully remember, that trauma had created gaps in his recollection, and he asked the people of Massachusetts whether he should resign from the Senate. The televised address was a calculated performance, designed to evoke sympathy and deflect accountability. Some viewers saw a man genuinely shattered by tragedy. Others saw a politician deploying the Kennedy charisma to escape consequences that would have destroyed an ordinary person. The legal proceedings that followed were carefully managed to minimize consequences for Kennedy. The inquest was held in secret, closed to public and press. The investigation focused narrowly on whether Kennedy had committed a specific crime rather than broadly examining what had actually happened and why. Kennedy ultimately pleaded guilty to leaving the scene of an accident, a misdemeanor. He received a 2-month suspended sentence. He served no time. He paid a minimal fine. For Mary Jo's parents, Joseph and Gwen Kopechne, the outcome was devastating. Their daughter was dead. The man who had been driving the car faced essentially no punishment. The questions that haunted them: why that road? What were his intentions? Could she have been saved if he'd called immediately? Were never adequately answered. They were pressured, subtly but unmistakably, to accept the official narrative, to not pursue additional investigation, to allow the matter to be closed. The Kopechnes were working-class Catholics who had raised their daughter to believe in service, in faith, in contributing to something larger than herself. They were devastated not only by Mary Jo's death, but by the injustice of how her death was handled, by the reality that wealth and power could purchase a different kind of justice, by the knowledge that their daughter's life had been valued less than a Kennedy's political future. Ted Kennedy survived Chappaquiddick politically in the immediate term. He was re-elected to the Senate in 1970. He continued to be an effective legislator, but his presidential ambitions, the destiny that had seemed inevitable before that July night, were permanently destroyed. In 1972, Democrats needed a candidate to challenge Nixon. Kennedy was the obvious choice. The Kennedy name, the legacy of his brothers, the political machinery still intact. But Chappaquiddick made him unelectable at the national level. The unanswered questions, the sense that the full truth had never been told, the image of a man who had left a woman to die while he protected his own interests, this was too much for national voters to overlook. Kennedy declined to run. The same pattern repeated in 1976. The wound had not healed. The scandal remained a barrier he could not overcome. He finally attempted a presidential campaign in 1980, challenging incumbent Jimmy Carter for the Democratic nomination. But Chappaquiddick haunted every moment of the campaign. In an interview with Roger Mudd, Kennedy was unable to adequately explain why he wanted to be president or what had really happened that night. He appeared defensive, evasive, unprepared. The interview was disastrous, revealing a man still unable to confront the truth of that night, still carrying the weight of choices he could not defend. He lost the nomination. He never ran for president again. The Kennedy dynasty, carefully constructed over 3 generations, effectively ended on Dike Bridge. The machinery that had been designed to produce presidents ground to a halt, unable to overcome the reality of what had happened on Chappaquiddick, unable to transform immoral failure into political success. Ted Kennedy would serve in the Senate until his death in 2009, becoming one of the most effective legislators in American history. He championed healthcare, education, civil rights, workers' protections. He achieved remarkable things. He made genuine differences in millions of lives. But he never became president. He never escaped Chappaquiddick. The scandal remained inseparable from his legacy, mentioned in virtually every assessment of his life and career. And Mary Jo Kopechne, who should have had decades ahead of her, who should have been remembered for her work, her dedication, her own achievements, remained forever 28. Her story reduced to a chapter in the Kennedy saga, her death serving primarily as the event that destroyed Ted Kennedy's presidential ambitions, rather than being honored as the tragedy of a life cut short. In the years that followed, as Chappaquiddick became political history, as the scandal was analyzed and debated and written about, Mary Jo Kopechne herself was often forgotten. The focus was on Ted Kennedy, his judgment, his political future, his moral failure. Mary Jo became a name, a victim, a political footnote rather than a fully realized human being whose life had value independent of the Kennedy story. But she was more than that. She was a young woman who had believed deeply in public service, who had worked tirelessly for a cause she thought could make America better, who had survived the trauma of Bobby Kennedy's assassination and was trying to rebuild her life when it was taken from her. She had dreams. She had plans. She had a future that was foreclosed not by fate or accident, but by a series of choices made by Ted Kennedy. The choice to turn onto that road, the choice to drive too fast, the choice not to call for help immediately, the choice to prioritize his own political survival over her life. Her parents, Joseph and Gwen, lived the rest of their lives with the pain of her loss and the injustice of how it was handled. They maintained their dignity, never publicly attacking the Kennedys, but also never fully accepting the official narrative. Their daughter had been failed by the man who was driving the car, by the legal system that gave him minimal consequences, by a society that cared more about his political future than her life. Joseph Kopechne died in 2003. Gwen died in 2007. They went to their graves without ever receiving full truth or justice for their daughter's death. The questions that haunted them: could she have been saved? What really happened during those 10 hours remained unanswered. Mary Jo was buried in Pennsylvania, far from the island where she died. Her grave is marked with a simple stone. Visitors are rare. The world moved on, forgot her, reduced her to a name associated with scandal, rather than remembering her as a person who deserved better than the death she received. The water off Dike Bridge is still cold. The current still runs strong between Pucha Pond and the ocean. The bridge has been rebuilt. It now has guardrails, proper approaches, is far safer than the narrow wooden structure that stood there in 1969. But the site itself remains a place of pilgrimage for some, a destination for those who want to stand where Mary Jo Kopechne died, where Ted Kennedy's political future ended, where the Kennedy dynasty encountered a moral failure it could not overcome. What is the legacy of Chappaquiddick? What does this tragedy teach us about power, responsibility, and how we value human life? First, it reveals the stark reality of how differently justice operates for the powerful than for everyone else. An ordinary person who drove off a bridge, who waited 10 hours to report the accident, who left someone to die while protecting themselves, that person would face serious criminal charges, likely spend time in prison, certainly experience life-altering consequences. Ted Kennedy faced a misdemeanor charge and a suspended sentence. This differential treatment undermines the principle of equal justice under law and creates a system in which the powerful can escape accountability. Second, Chappaquiddick demonstrates what happens when a person prioritizes their own interests over someone else's life. Ted Kennedy made calculations during those 10 hours. He weighed the consequences of immediately reporting the accident, the questions about why he was on that road, the potential scandal, the damage to his political future, against the possibility that Mary Jo might still be alive and could be saved. He chose to protect himself. This choice reveals something fundamental about character, about what people are willing to sacrifice to preserve their own ambitions. Third, the tragedy shows how easily victims can be forgotten when they become entangled with the powerful. Mary Jo Kopechne was erased twice. First by the water that claimed her life, second by the political narrative that reduced her to a footnote in Ted Kennedy's story. Her humanity was subordinated to his political future. Her death mattered primarily for what it meant to him, rather than for what it meant in itself. Finally, Chappaquiddick illuminates the limits of power. Ted Kennedy escaped prison. He kept his Senate seat. He continued his career, but he never became president. He never fulfilled his family's expectations. He never escaped the shadow of that night. The machinery that protected him from legal consequences could not protect him from historical judgment, could not erase the stain on his legacy, could not give him back the future he destroyed on Dike Bridge. If you had been one of the people at the cottage that night, if you had seen Ted Kennedy and Mary Jo Kopechne leave together, would you have thought anything of it? Would you have had any sense that something was wrong? And if hours later you learned what had happened, that Mary Jo was dead, that Ted had waited 10 hours to report the accident, how would you have processed that knowledge? Would you have spoken up? Would you have demanded answers? Or would you, like so many in the Kennedy orbit, have remained silent, allowed the powerful to control the narrative, accepted that some lives matter more than others? These are not comfortable questions. They ask us to consider our own complicity in systems that value power over justice, our own willingness to look away when the truth is inconvenient. Mary Jo Kopechne deserved better than the death she received. She deserved a system that valued her life as much as it valued Ted Kennedy's political future. What are we doing now, in our own time, to ensure that such failures do not continue to happen?